pro skateboarder at 15, first skateboarder with a deal from Gatorade, best-selling author, Brandon Novak. Thank you so much for coming in here today for this interview. You came to our hometown to speak on your story about recovery, about redemption, and I think you spoke some real inspiring words here downtown Hagerstown today. So we really appreciate you coming out here and helping us fight the battle as well.
Yeah, the feeling is mutual, and I'm not gonna lie, I underestimated what I was walking into here at your studio.
Thank
right?
you.
Like we just finished the event, and it was a really beautiful event. A lot of people that seemed to really, get fired up per se for their recovery, because that's when it works best for us, when we're proactive in our own sobriety and recovery. And I don't really look much into things, and I agreed to the interview, and then I'm like, all right. And I thought it was gonna be done there, and they're like, okay, let's go here. So cool. And I had never been to Hagerstown, although I'm from Baltimore. Nothing really brought me to Hagerstown.
Yeah.
I was fortunate not to end up here in the lovely penitentiary or the
Yeah,
other
that's
things
true.
that Hagerstown is known for.
Yep.
But driving from there to here, I'm like, fuck, we're going into the hood, right?
Yeah,
like
a little
there's
bit,
the
yeah.
open air
Yeah.
drug markets, and not that I'm like, so far removed from that, but I definitely recognize and spot that. So I'm like,
Yeah.
this is interesting. That shit fascinates me. I have a strange place in my heart for that kind of action. And we're going, and as I'm going, I'm getting deeper and deeper in, and I'm like, where the fuck? Then I pull up, and then she's like, it used to be a furniture factory. So judging from the area, it looks like I'm walking into an abandoned furniture factory. Cool. And I walk in, and I'm fucking taken back, man. You guys have
Thank
really
you. That's a big compliment.
outdone yourself. This is it's professional. It's very nice.
Thank you very much. And inspired by you guys, inspired by CKY, Jackass, Viva La Bam. I mean, I was telling Phil, who's behind the scenes helping us do the interview, if it wasn't for CKY, Jackass, Rob Deerdeck is another good one, and Tom Green, if it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't even be doing what I'm doing for a living. So and I'm not much younger than you, but I remember being 13, 14, watching MTV and going, oh my gosh, this is the funniest. My dad watched it. It was so funny to watch what you guys were able to do and create. And so we're just really, really happy that you're here for this.
Yeah.
This is a big deal for us. I mean, especially Phil. He's got his Haggard DVD over there
Cool,
waiting
man.
for you.
Yeah.
Hey, who's this guy that's always out here?
Dooley, why? I don't know, he's so shady. Always has money and being so sneaky,
Yeah, but he's a good dude to have on your side because he'd help you out in any kind of bind, so just fake like you're friends with him if he tries to talk to you.
What's up, Dooley? What's up, sweetheart? Bro, why weren't you at the Rager last night?
What Rager? Maybe because you didn't call me up and invite me.
Watch your mouth, sweetheart.
I didn't really have to act. Everyone kind of thought I was a shady, weird character anyways. He basically literally picked me up from being homeless in Baltimore and transplanted me to Westchester. And all Dunn, Rab, and Franz are like, who the fuck's this fucking weird drug addict kid from Baltimore? They really didn't know me.
Oh, okay.
I had known Bam for years because we were both skaters.
That was skating oriented.
So Bam was the only one that skated out of the crew.
Okay.
And Bam and me and Bucky, who's from Baltimore, we went to a skate park in Pennsylvania called Cheapskates one time, and that's where we initially met Bam.
Okay.
And when I met Bam, I'm like, fuck, man, this kid's gonna be a problem because he was almost like my doppelganger. We dressed alike. We were the same age. We skated alike. We liked the same, transition. We were consistent. We were good contest skaters, out of the box trick style. So I was like, fuck, this kid's gonna be like my enemy. Well, first we would come from Baltimore and we would go stay at Bam's parents' house and go skate Cheapskates. And him and I became best friends at that point. And we really didn't have any interaction with the rest of the CKY guys because there was no reason.
Yeah,
It was just a full-on skate mission.
I always wondered that because it's like it almost seemed like you were forced into some of those stunts they had you doing back then. Whereas other guys, they were like willing to get kicked in the nuts. You were always like you were grimming before it. Like you knew what was happening. I always felt like they like Bam kind of forced you into some of that stuff.
I mean, it's a mixed bag of whatever was going on with whatever stunt you're talking about, of what made me do it.
Okay.
You know, there was always different incentives and motives behind my.
Yeah. Okay.
But
okay.
I mean, at the end, when I, like for Jackass and Viva La Bam stuff, I was the first one to put my hand up to do the stuff that nobody wanted to do.
Okay.
And this is why, really, because you take a guy who prior to that was a homeless heroin addict here in Baltimore City, prostituting my body to get another bag of heroin. Like, I know fucking pain. You know what I mean? So, like, I know what it's like to be homeless, eat out of a trash can, prostitute his body, you know, break everyone's heart that believes in you. Like, that's pain.
So the stunt wasn't nothing at that point.
So, like, being on TV, becoming instantaneously famous, getting a rather large paycheck, all of a sudden acquiring health assurance, abundance of fucking women, cocaine, alcohol, and worst case scenario, I do this stunt, I get hurt, I go to the hospital, which they then prescribe me narcotics, which I'm allowed to take because they wouldn't let me like do pills or heroin because I would nod out, I'd sleep, I'd steal your wallet because I become physically addicted. But cocaine and alcohol was okay. It was socially acceptable. It's like those guys didn't understand addiction, rightfully so. So like me doing these insane stunts nobody wanted to do was like a dream come true. Because let's say very worst case scenario, I get hurt, then I get rushed to the hospital and I get tons of pain meds, which I'm allowed to take now from everybody. So it's a win-win.
Yeah.
Fucking no-brainer. Bring it on.
Wow. I've never really, to put it full circle like that is pretty crazy.
That's the truth,
And you spoke
man.
a little bit about it downtown today, and I never really processed it like that. Like the circle you were kind of in to be paid for doing stuff, and it just kind of kept coming back around,
I mean,
you know?
right,
like,
I'm an addict, I'm an alcoholic. I'm like really disconnected from reality. I won't accept it for what it is. That's why I continue to get high, because like the moment of clarity creeps in, meaning like I'm going into withdrawal, I don't have my drugs, then I'm forced to face reality for what it really is. And the quicker I can do a line, take a hit the pipe, swallow the pill, I can escape the reality that I had created for myself, right? So then I end up in Viva La Bam and Jackass, and it's kind of the same thing. The more outlandish my behaviors are, the more outrageous my antics become, the higher the ratings go, the more in demand I become, the bigger my fucking paycheck is. Bring it on. It's like a perfect recipe for addiction.
And now, I mean, that brings me to my next question. Do you think as entertainers and celebrities, and addiction's a lot more dangerous because of having the money, or maybe even knowing more people to come bring it to you, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it makes it easier, right? When you hit a certain status in whatever field you're in, right? Like, it really doesn't have to be celebrity or entertainment world. It could just be the corporate world, right? You become the boss, you become the owner.
You're
absolutely. Kind of disconnected from reality. You run in a very limited circle. There's repercussions from your actions, but not nearly as much as it would be if you were, I fucking hate the word, but a quote unquote normal person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
no, I agree. Yeah.
So yeah, it plays a part. You know, for me, it did. I wrote my book, my first book, Dream Seller. And after that, I written that book when I was still using, and it was no secret. Like, I didn't try to portray that I was sober ever. So when I would meet people or people would meet me, they knew that my deal was kind of centered around drugs and alcohol. So like, in order to maybe get my attention a little bit longer, like, hey, you want to go do some blow? Hey, you want a pill? You know what I mean? I'm not trying to deflect my shortcomings on anybody else, right? Like, I take complete responsibility for my actions. That's not what I'm doing with that. But it definitely helped. It helped enable my addiction, 100%. And I played that card to the fullest.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, a big reason why you're here speaking is, a couple years ago, Emily and the local health department, they created Washington Goes Purple to not only inform people, also help with the stigma, but more importantly, education.
Yeah.
Now you being a little older, we're close to the same age. As we were growing up, we did get some drug education, right? But a lot. Yeah, I remember the campaign "Just Say No."
Yeah.
That it was a great slogan, but didn't really hold any substance because "Just Say No" just doesn't work when you're under pressure. Do you feel like more education when you were younger may have actually helped you with that?
Maybe. Not really, though. For me personally, I can only
Okay.
talk about my story, right? Do I think education is needed and could be very beneficial?
Yeah.
100%,
Yeah.
wholeheartedly, right? Like would I rather jump out of a plane with 1 parachute or 5? I'd rather jump out with 5. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
the more safety, the better it is.
Okay.
Right? But for my particular story, and this is just my opinion, I believe I was genetically predisposed, meaning my father was an addict, his father was an addict. I'm the only son by my father. My brother and sister are by a different man.
Okay.
My mother, my brother, my sisters, they could take or leave it. They could care less. Me, my father, his father, prone to addiction.
Okay.
And that paired with my upbringing due to my addicted father did not help. But I say that to say I still knew right from wrong.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
knew.
Absolutely.
That I didn't not know. I knew. So, I could sit here and talk for hours about what it could have been.
Yeah.
But the long-winded answer to your short question is yes, I think education could be very beneficial to the youth behind us coming up.
Now, with that said, there's a lot of talk as far as who gives this education, right? Who presents this to kids? And there's a local guy in town, a real good friend of mine named Rob Zellner, who sold drugs. He was the guy you went to get pot, get pills, whatever it was. Now, what's happened with Rob is he got clean as well, and now his story is super impactful. And he was thinking, well, I need this education before I can talk to kids. But what he's found out is his story is more impactful than the education at this point, and now he's getting the education, but the story opened it up. Where do you sit as far as educating kids? Do you think it should come from strictly like a college degree or somebody like you?
I think where we're at today in the day and age of 2020, the opioid pandemic that we find ourselves in, the 174 people that will die today directly as a sole result of an opioid overdose, not even the rest, the 1 out of 3 people that will be affected. Fuck it, the severity of the situation that we find ourselves in today leads me to say this. In the field that I reside in, which is harm reduction, there's no margin for error, yet it is impossible to do perfect. I'm a big fan of doing something.
Okay.
If any of us had the answer, I would bottle that thing up, I'd sell it, I'd be a billionaire billions times over. If we had the answer, we would not be here. I debated for a lot of years. I shot heroin for a lot of years. The longer I stay sober, the more that I learn that I don't know.
Okay.
The longer I stay sober, the less that I know. I remain teachable and open-minded to follow some suggestions of some people that have ideas, that want to do something.
Yeah.
And if we try that and it doesn't work, then we learn from that mistake to do better the next time. There's no right way to do this. Let's just come together, try it, and see the results that we get. What I can tell you, what's your facts, what's your numbers that don't lie, is that you're talking to a guy who did not graduate high school. I got my GED while I was incarcerated in the penitentiary. But I've just released my third book. My first book was a New York Times top 10 seller. I'm the first person to ever release an addiction graphic novel, which I'm really proud of. And now I get paid to go speak in colleges, right? I didn't go to college. I got my high school diploma, AKA GED, while I was incarcerated as an inmate. and now colleges pay me to go there. So you tell me which is more beneficial. I don't know. I think everything's beneficial. Fucking be a student, go learn, go stand on the corner, scream from the top of the mountain. Be an inmate, come out, get reformed, go stand on the corner and scream from the top of the mountain. Let's see what works.
We've watched, Steve-O battle addiction problems. We've watched Bam. We've seen it with you. Where do you find yourself amongst that crew as far as trying to help those guys at this point?
Well, that's the funny thing about it. Like, Bam is going through his own issues. It's a very publicly viewed story or show, if you will. And he's my best friend in the world, and I credit him to getting me out of Baltimore City, right? We started this off. I told you how he kind of just picked me up and brought me there one day.
Yeah.
While I was homeless. And everyone will message me, save Bam, save Bam, save Bam. It's like, fuck, do you think I just have this magic wand that I can just wave over someone and poof, you're better?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't work that way. And what I know of addiction, and I talked about this earlier, is that we're defiant by nature. We hate authority and we'll never conform unless it becomes our idea. So Bam would never listen if I called and said, you need rehab, you need rehab. We've done several interventions on him. I didn't either. I didn't listen when people did that to me. I'm sitting in a room, people come in to intervene on my daily usage. I'm like, fuck you. I automatically feel threatened, overwhelmed, attacked. So what I do is I show him my life in a form of attraction rather than promotion. Now, he knows that I don't drink and drug. So I just try to let him see, or anybody, not even him specifically, but anybody. I just present this world that I live in, which is not even an act. It's the real world. And I pray to God that it comes off as desirable, as attractive, as appealing as that, like, you want to fuck it. That's how bad you want it. And then if I can sell that to whoever it is in that manner, then they're like, fuck, okay, I want that so bad, I guess maybe I should ask them how to do it, right? Then the open-mindedness appears, and then they call that number that's attached to my media outlets, and me and my team say, here we go, we can do this. It's just a sleight of hand card trick,
Okay.
right? I'm not, I haven't reinvented the wheel here, but it doesn't take a genius. I believe it doesn't take a genius to see that you just have to present it in a different fashion, a different manner.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. Time will tell.
Now let's talk about your journey into becoming an author. I mean, I saw something where there was a story where you were on Viva La Bam, and Bam was pretty much like, you have to have a piece of paper and a pen in your hand at all times. Can you tell us about that story and how that came about?
I've never even fucking thought. I never thought twice about becoming an author. I could have cared less. Wasn't even on my radar. It wasn't even and it just was not a thought. Just like it wouldn't be a thought for me to come to an abandoned furniture warehouse if I didn't meet you. Like, right? Like, that's how much it was never a thought.
Well,
right?
We're nice guys. So.
Well, I mean, prior to meeting you today, like, I never would have said, I want to go to. I never would have woke up a week ago and said, I want to go to Hagerstown and see if I can find an abandoned furniture garage. It just wasn't there, right?
Yeah.
Never would it have been. But I'm filming Viva La Bam, and we would finish filming during the day, and we would all go to, like, a pub in Westchester. At that time, it was usually, like, Kildare's we would go to, and it would be the cast and the crew, and it would be, like, one big fucking table of, like, 30 people in a pub, right? Drinking, eating, music. And Bam was always really fascinated and intrigued by the positions I ended up in and the stories I had to tell about my addiction, because they're very interesting. Like when I told you coming here and I'm going through I was like tired, and I saw all of a sudden I looked down the alley and I saw like 8 dudes up against the wall posing for a picture. I'm like, I like perked up, right? Like it's I find that fascinating, whatever it is. So we'd be in the bar, and he'd be like, yo, tell this story, tell that story. And I would start telling these stories, and you could literally hear a pin drop. And I didn't know what was going on, but he recognized that.
Okay.
And he said, you know what? Because prior to that, my contract looked like this. I could live at his house. I could be on the show, but I couldn't do heroin or pills. Like I could drink and I could do whatever, but no downers. That day he looked at me and I'll never forget it. He said, you know what? Now the terms of your contract have changed again. I said, what do you mean? He said, you're going to write a book. Matt, again, that's the equivalent of me wanting to come to an old furniture warehouse in Hagerstown. You're going to write a book. And you're going to carry around a pen and a paper. And I don't care if you're not even fucking writing, but the first time that I don't see that pen and paper in your hand, unless you're sleeping, you're done. But as long as you carry that pen and paper in your hand, you could be on the show, you could get a paycheck, you could drive a car, and you can have a credit card to use. But the first time that I don't see that pen and paper in your hand, you're going back to Baltimore. And I was terrified to go back to Baltimore because I knew what I had left. And I knew that it was not any better. And now I had a taste of a much better life. You know, try that for size. Like living in this fucking $1 million home with like an abundance of everything. And then all of a sudden one day, like, now you're going back to Baltimore to be homeless again. It's like trading places.
Yeah.
That movie.
Yeah. So there's an important name that I see coming up a lot in your story, a behind-the-scenes guy that I don't think gets enough credit is Joe France.
Oh, fuck. I hope he doesn't hear this.
And I feel like he helped you write your book, right? And then he seems to be involved with a lot of video production, storytelling. Like, how important is a guy like that for you on your team to help make this possible now?
Well, it's essential. So Franz and I have a long relationship, and at the end, when I was drinking and drugging, my addiction was at its worst. After we had written Dream Seller. See, in my mind, throughout my addiction, everything was like a mental chess game during active addiction, right? Because everything had to align in just such an order that the end result would be me getting a bag of heroin or some money to get it. Right, so what I told you had to align with what you told him, and then you told her, because I would lie, all these like bobbing and weaving shell game kind of tricks. So in doing that, I'd create a lot of scenarios and narratives in my head that weren't even real, right? Because hence the title of my book, Dream Seller. I was just selling these dreams to obtain the ultimate goal, which was another fix.
I got it. Okay.
So, and I'm already an alcoholic at that point who's in the peak of his addiction. So most of my life is just delusional things that I've made up, right? I'm just so disconnected from reality. Okay. I'm just barely making it through this world. And after we had written Dream Seller, I had come up with this delusion that he had ripped me off a lot of money, and I'd call him and I'd be, completely annihilated, and like my publishers, that the publishing company, they don't even accept phone calls from me. Because I would get so fucked up, I would call and I would demand these changes, and I would want this money, and then they would call him and be like, what's going, you know what I mean? So they had to create a barrier. So so now people are creating, now there's like in my mind, room for him to get over on me. And I created this narrative that he's like, funneled all this money out. Long story short, I end up in my final treatment center, God willing, number 13. I'm in my last treatment center, and I have nothing or no one. Not even my assistant, CJ, who is like on payroll, as my employee, will come see me. It's like no one. And one day I get a visit on a Sunday, and I'm shocked because no one's expressed any interest in coming to see me. And I walk into the day room, and there's all these visits going on, and I'm looking around, and I see fucking Franz sitting at the table. And now at this point, I had told him that our relationship is done. I hate him. don't ever fucking speak to me. I'm suing you. All these things. And he's sitting there, and I walk up, and he goes, "Where's everybody at?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Where is everybody?" I said, "I don't have anybody." He said, "You mean to tell me I'm the only one that's here to visit you and that's coming to see you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "That's pretty fucking pathetic, being that you hate my guts and you want to sue me, and I'm the only one here to see you."
Wow.
And it was really true. And
Wow.
But now still, I'm like not even 2 weeks into a 30-day stay of treatment. And I'm sick. I haven't addressed my issues. I'm just kind of like going through the motions, learning how to eat food, keep it down, shower, brush my teeth, like that kind of simplistic shit. I'm definitely not going to reveal to him this mental chess game in my mind, because I'm still like, I got to, I don't know if I got to keep this guard up. So what I did was I told my therapist that he had came, and I told her what I thought was going on, and she said, "Okay, well, next Sunday was visits. Next Sunday, I'm going to come in, and we're going to have a group visit, and I'm going to orchestrate and mediate this visit." And he came, she came. She said, "Brandon, what are your thoughts? What are your concerns? What are your fears? Joe, what are you?" And I told her, I put it on the table, and Franz looked at me, and he was just looked at me with a complete disbelief. He had no idea that I thought that.
Yeah.
And not only did I think it, I believed it because I thought it so much.
Yeah.
And he was just like taken back. And I'm like, well, I'm really fucking sick. And it was in that treatment center that we made it past that, and I started like becoming honest and very vulnerable and transparent. And he said, "So what do you say? You ready to get working on the sequel to Dream Seller?" And I'm like, "Dude, I don't think I can do it." I said, "I wrote Dream Seller while sniffing copious amounts of cocaine and endless red wine, bottles of red wine." And I believed, I was under the false illusion that I could only write under the influence, right?
Okay.
Because cocaine allowed me to become very descriptive. And I'd write 7 pages about how you stand, how you look at me, how you're sitting there with your fingers interlocked, and how your shirt's somewhat, open, but, the color, before I even said your name. So I had no confidence in myself that I could produce anything worth letting someone hear. And he said, "You can do this." He walked me through it. He guided me as a friend, and he brought up a tape recorder, because I wrote my first book in pen and paper, but I just couldn't put pen to paper. So he brought up like an audio recorder, and he gave it to my therapist, and she implemented Monday through Friday, 1 hour. I go out on the picnic bench, and he would give me a list of topics, stories to elaborate on. Because we work together, he knows. And I would take them, and I would sit, and I record what I could remember about whatever story he wanted me to speak on. And I still didn't believe it was going to be any good. I really did not. But you know what I was going to do? I got into the format of like meaning what I say and saying what I mean. And because I told him I would do that, I did it.
Had accountability.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I sat there. I endured what seemed like 1,000,000 hours worth of a 1 hour sit down session with me talking to a recorder, thinking it was complete shit. Did that on Monday through Friday. He came Sunday. I gave that to him. He went home. He came back the following with another tape. He said, "This is some of the best work you've ever produced to date."
Wow.
And I was incapable of seeing that.
Yeah.
And since then, we've become like this. And that book, The Streets of Baltimore, was just released like a month ago.
People find recovery in a whole lot of ways, right? And I've noticed that you tend to talk about faith and saying that there's no way you could have recovered by yourself due to your own work. So what do you say to somebody who's just at bottom that says, well, faith or whoever I believe wouldn't have never let me get to this point? So how do you encourage somebody to develop that trust and that faith to take that stride and go that route with a faith-based recovery.
I can relate to that statement. I've seen me say that statement. If there was a God, how the fuck would he let me get here? I was that guy. I was that guy. There's nothing I haven't seen, tried, or did to get sober. There's only one thing I haven't did to get high, and that was commit homicide. And it's not because I'm a tough guy that was scared. It was just because the opportunity never presented itself in order to get another bag. So I say all that to say, I'm really good at playing devil's advocate. I understand. It makes sense to me why someone would rather say, you know, I'm going to stay in this shooting gallery with the needle in my arm as opposed to taking your hand and accepting the help that you're offering. That makes complete sense to me. Don't ask me how to conduct brain surgery. I can't tell you. Don't ask me how to prepare your taxes. I have no idea. Ask me about addiction. I can call it. I know it. It's the one thing I know through and through. And with recovery and addiction, it's not a one-size-fits-all, black and white issue. If that were the case, I would have got it at my first treatment center at 17. I didn't get it till my 13th at 38. All that simply happened to me is that I was beaten so badly, the pain had become so great that for 24 years after possessing that job that consisted of knowing everything, walking into that 13th treatment center, the writing was on the wall. It was undeniable. I could not minimize the severity of the situation that led me in yet again to another treatment center to accept that what I did know is that I didn't know, and that my very best thinking places me here time after time after time. So for the first time in my life, I walked into a treatment center with an absolute lack of plan, right? That stemmed from the lack of knowledge. For the first time, I walked in with absolutely no plan. And that lack of plan has produced the best of plans. Because all it did was allow me to understand the common denominator in my problems were me. So if I'm the problem, maybe I should just get out of my way.
Back to accountability.
Yeah. Follow the suggestions of the people that are here that continue to put their hand out and say, let me show you the way. Knowing that I don't know, but they do, they're always here, open-minded enough to just say, hey, okay, I'm ready. Will you show me? And then be willing enough to follow their suggestions. For lack of a better word, I dumbed my way into this. I didn't see God in it. I didn't see Buddha. I didn't see willpower. I didn't see. I just knew that I didn't know. And in following the suggestions of my mentors, my sponsors, people that I believed in and trusted, they said, hey, I'm going to walk you through these 12 steps. 13 treatment centers in, lost count of outpatients and detoxes. There was only one thing I had never tried. And that was those 12 steps. And at every treatment center, they kept saying, work the steps, get a sponsor, go to a meeting. Work the steps, get a sponsor, go to a meeting. I'd go to a meeting, I'd get a sponsor, but I never attempted the steps. 38 years old, just woke up off life support, walking into my 13th treatment center. Wanted to kill myself so bad, just did not want to hurt myself in the process. Horrible with suicide because I keep fucking waking up. I said, you know what? I don't even want to be here, but I have nowhere else that wants me. So why not? And I get a sponsor. He walks me through these steps. From step 1 to 2 didn't make sense. 2 to 3 didn't make sense. None of these steps made sense until I was on step 9, and I had to revert back to step 3, which was turning my life over to the care of my God as I understand him. Basically trusting in God, not me. And I did that in a certain situation and for the first time in my life, I told the truth, and it prevailed, and I escaped a jail sentence because I told the truth. And at that moment, all the other steps came flooding in. And again, like I said earlier, in retrospect, looking back, I've now been sober over 5 years, and it's very easy for me to recognize the synchronicity in life's events that have led me to the here and now, which proved to me for me about my recovery. All keywords are mine and me. I'm not talking about anybody else. Is that a God has been working in my life for a very long time. And I experienced these 12 steps, and I had that spiritual experience. I didn't know that was going to happen. It's just what happened to me. So now what I say is that the God of my understanding has brought me to Alcoholics Anonymous. And Alcoholics Anonymous, via the 12 steps, have brought me back to the God of my understanding. I'm not religious, but I'm insanely spiritual. The first 2 years, I didn't think anything of God. Wasn't even a word that came out of my mouth. The remaining 3 years, which is where I'm at now, I've learned that everything is God. I'm not in control of anything. Looking back now, right, they told me in treatment if I changed my perception, I could change my world. I view my addiction as me simply being divinely inconvenienced, or convenienced, if you will, depending upon your perception. Because I take complete accountability for my actions. And I know that no human power could ever have gotten me sober or kept me sober. If it could have, it would have. And like I told you, when I got here, treatment center number 13, at 38, I didn't want to fucking be here. I just had nowhere else to go. I had moved to Finland. I had moved to London. I had moved to Paris. I had moved all over the United States. I had changed women, homes, careers in hopes of that obsession to be removed. The desire to be lifted that I possessed for so many years to want to drink and drug. There were a lot of days I did not want to use, but I just didn't know how to not, you know?
We're going to go a little lighter here for the remainder of the interview. Can you tell us the Sober Skate mission with Bam and the crew? What is that like? Did you ever think that at the age of 40 you'd still be out skating and being able to skate? What's that like to reunite with those guys in your 40s and go skating again? It's got to be rad.
It was that language of the heart, man. You know, that language of the heart. That, skateboarding did for me at a very young age what drugs and alcohol did for me at a later age. Right? You give me that skateboard at the age of 7 and put me in a room with the world's prettiest models. I'll not only think that they're waiting for me, but I'll believe that they're dying to marry me. Right? Drugs and alcohol produce that same effect later on down in the road.
Okay.
So returning back to that, like natural, pure, good fun was at 42 years old is my age, right? So at 16, when I was designing that pro model for POW, and I thought that the most sensible decision would be to pursue heroin and give up on that pro dream completely disappeared, right? I never thought that would become a reality. As fate would have it, 5 years later, on my 5-year anniversary, prior to that, I went to Barcelona, Spain. I filmed a legit skate part that stands firm with the skaters today. That was released on my 5-year sober birthday, along with my actual pro model skateboard and the streets of Baltimore. So, like, full circle, at 42 years old, my 5-year anniversary, I actually released my pro model skateboard.
So cool.
Through the Heart Supply, which is, Element. Johnny Shiloff, who created Element. Element was sold to Billabong, so he decided he was going to create a new company. Now he's created the Heart Supply, which is who my and then 10% of the proceeds that were netted off of the sales of my board were donated to Attack Addiction, which pays for people to get into recovery.
Oh, wow.
So, like,
full circle.
I'm not fucking clever enough to create these outcomes. Left to my own devices, now I know where it is. I'll go one block over and cop a whole bunch of dope and fucking put it in my arm. Right? I didn't do this. I just simply got out of my way. The pain became my purpose. I got out of my way. I knew that I don't know. For the first time, I trusted in a power greater than myself to guide and direct me. And here I am.
Yeah. So talk about single cat dad life. You're talking to two dudes right here that love cats. I got 3 cats, no kids. He's got no kids.
I just got my 3rd cat.
Like, what is that? It's rare to meet cat men because we get ridiculed for that because as if cats aren't manly or something
Well,
like
it's
that.
funny you say that because while we're sitting here, my cat sitter texted me. She said, I'm heading over after the dog walk. I'm doing it right now. And then she sends me these pictures of the cats, which I'll show you, and with a caption, one of the little jerks knocked the food bowl off the loft. I cleaned it up, all good things. There was not much kibble left. But that's what I'm receiving while I'm here.
Oh, cool. That's cool.
And then I just got my 3rd one, Domino, who's a fucking hellion. I love it though, man.
Why cats over dogs?
I used to be a dog guy. I was born. My father bred German Shepherds. I've had pretty much every dog known to man. But I think clearly somewhere along the line it transitioned. But I think cats fit my lifestyle more. They're more self-sufficient.
Yeah.
You know what I like about cats too? That they don't live on top of me. They're not expected to give me their attention. But when they do, I feel like I just met fucking Jesus Christ face to face.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm like, don't move. Don't make a noise. I don't want him to run. You know, like it's really like, with a dog, the euphoria wears off. So, I watched that. What's his name? The movie came out. Freddie Mercury. What was the movie? Bohemian Rhapsody.
There it is.
He was the fucking man. He had so much. I mean, clearly he had a shit ton of money. But when he got older, he was fighting like I'm gay, but I love the chick that lives across the street. And all he had was his like 10 cats. So he bought this humongous home, and each cat had their own real life room, like that we would have. So that's my goal. When I continue, God willing, to make a ton of money, I'm going to buy a humongous house, and each one of these cats will just have their own room.
Cat dads for life.
Yeah.
Hashtag cat dad life.
I used to say, if my cats could talk, I'd never leave my house. Just like in recovery, be careful what the fuck you ask for. COVID hits, can't leave my house, and the motherfucker still can't talk. So I'm like, shit. So then what do? I buy another one. I save all mine, though. They're rescues.
This has always been really intriguing to me in like everything, all the stunt. Like I'd see you skating, you do a trick, you take a hard fall, right? You're laying on the ground moaning. It goes to somebody laughing at you. It cuts back to you and your ass is out. Like your ass was out all the time, my guy, in everything. What is with you, or what was with you just always being naked, or at least your butt cheeks just hanging out?
Well, again, right? See, the more outrageous I became, the more outlandish my behaviors were. The higher the ratings went, the more in demand I was, the higher my checks came.
Okay.
What did you bring up? What are you talking about right now? Point fucking proven.
It's like your ass was always, no matter what, your ass fell out.
I was making a fucking really outlandish antic, and my behaviors were out of the world, so people loved it.
Yeah.
And I didn't give a fuck about doing it. Christ, I used to let men blow me for heroin. Like, you think I give a shit about being naked? That's like a walk in the park.
You got it!
Attempt 3.
You got it in you, Novak?
Yeah, I mean, I'll do it, but I'm getting hurt bad every time. I know how it's not right. I think I hurt my pelvis.
Two's idea was a 900 attempt, where you did it at least 2 dozen times, and you couldn't even do a 360,
No,
let alone
no.
a 900.
Shock value, It wasn't my idea. Most of the ideas were Bam's. It wasn't like I woke up like I'm gonna achieve the 900. No, not
But you
at
said
all.
sometimes it depended on the situation, somebody would ease you into or get you to convince you to do it, or like.
It could have been a bottle of wine. It could have. I just did a big line of blow.
Like,
It
were you
could've-
ever close to land a 900 in your
No,
real
never,
career?
never.
Because at that point, it was only Tony Hawk, and I think one other guy had
Dude,
done one.
I've never even done a 540. I just learned fucking backside 360s,
Oh man!
and that's when I'm sober.
Brandon, thank you so
Cool,
much for
man.
stopping by. You and your friends growing up have been such an inspiration to us and what we do. So this is a pretty cool moment for us to have you here in our studio,
Yeah, it's
being
rad,
able to
man.
talk
I'm
to you.
grateful to be
So
a part. I'd like to end with, if anybody out there is suffering with the disease of addiction and/or alcoholism, and you found yourself in a position that you cannot get out of on your own, I and my team are here to help you. And with that being said, I'm going to give you my direct number, and you can call me. And if I don't answer, my team will answer, and we will help you. And that phone number is 610-635-9092. Okay? Call.
thanks, Brandon. Appreciate you,
thank
man.
you.